Hello and welcome to the Noob Spearo podcast, where we interview experts, authorities, and characters on all things spearfishing. Come and join us after the show at noobspearo.com, the online spearfishing community helping you to become a better Spearo. Here are your hosts for the show, Shrek and Turbo.
G'day guys and welcome to today's episode of the Noob Spearo podcast. Today's episode is an absolute cracker and we have a ton of laughs with none other than Jeromy Gamble. And we speak to Jeromy in particular in his Veterans Vault, I believe, about a very unique burling or chumming idea. It'll blow your mind. I've never thought about doing this before, and it's very creative, and we're going to give it a go next time.
And before we get into the episode with Jeromy Gamble from Spearing Magazine, got a couple of shout-outs. So, look, we've Turbo is just putting the finishing touches on 99 Tips to Get Better at Spearfishing, the illustrated version with photos. And some of the contributors are phenomenal. And two of our former guests on the show, Jesse Cripps and Michael Takash, have given us a ton of images, just super awesome images to use in the book. And you can support them by heading over to Underwater Ally at Patreon.
Yep, that's right.
And they've got some phenomenal videos about their time in Tonga, and it's all filmed in this this last 12 months. They've banged it together and produced a phenomenal show. So head over and check them out. Also, today's episode is brought to you in partnership with Staunch Apparel. Now, North Sea Industry.
It's North Sea powered. There you go.
North Sea powered. Right, yeah. So this episode is also a retro episode. We're doing the throwback with the throwback soundbites.
Yes, you guys are in for an absolute treat. Pirate Pete and the unnamed Mexican character that used to be on, I think, the first 10 or so episodes have been requested by Jeromy. So there's a little treat to one of our biggest fans. We're going to throw those sound bites back in.
I love those old
And if you do like them, please message us on Insta or Facebook or send us an email and tell us you want them back.
Yeah, we'll try and keep them in there and produce our audio producer. Also,
actually, if we can get 100 thumbs up or pros for those sound bites, we'll put them in the next show.
All right, 100's a lot. How about 20?
Hey, you got to make them work for it, man. It's like you're always selling us short.
All right, latest iTunes review from Kidju at 11. Listening to these guys has already saved me hundreds of dollars, but not jumping in the water dressed up as a Christmas tree. That's a take on the Darren Shields.
That's right.
Good stuff. It's great to listen to people who are passionate about what they are talking about. It makes the talk so much more interesting. So thanks for that review, Kidju11. Sebastian Basso from the Melbourne Club Spearfish. He's another bloke that's jumped on from Club Spearfish down in Melbourne. Sounds like they've got a phenomenal club culture down there.
Yeah.
Really love to get hold of that. Sebastian says, "G'day lads, have been listening to your podcast back to back whilst chained to my daily slavery. I'm a member at Club Spearfish in Melbourne and I will definitely recommend to the new guys to have a listen. It's great to hear about others' experience, good and bad. I rather learn from others' mistakes than make them myself. Although I'm sure I have. It's also good to hear some humour to salt the meat in there too." And thanks for that, Sebastian. There's a bit more to your message, but we'll keep that between us.
Absolutely. And g'day and thanks to Gypsy Spearo again. I think he's had another shout out, but mate, he's absolutely killing it down there. Yeah, he's just he's shooting big tuna, he's shooting billfish, so he's having a ball.
I also wanted to have a shout out to the Townsville Skin Diving Club. They are part of the auf.com.au. You can join that club. Get into the club. You can talk to Matt Ludbroke. They have meetings on the first Tuesday of each month. So head on up to the Townsville Skin Diving Club. You can learn a bit more about them at auf.com.au.
Fantastic. Are we done?
We're done.
That's the notice board.
Let's head into it.
Let's get into this episode today with Spearing Magazine's Jeromy Gamble. Guys, if you're on the hunt for some new equipment, check out Adreno Spearfishing Supplies at spearfishing.com.au. They have a huge range of gear. They've got great prices. And if you use the code NoobSpearo at checkout, you'll save yourself $20 on all purchases over $200. So check them out at spearfishing.com.au and use the code NoobSpearo at checkout.
Guys, head on over to penetratorfins.com nbsp.com. They are proud sponsors of today's Noob Spearo podcast. We're happy to announce a code you can use to save yourself $20 on any blade purchase. That's right, save $20, pump in the code Noob Spearo at checkout, penetratorfins.com. Save yourself some dough on some fins and get yourself some of the best fins going with $25 flat rate international shipping and a full international warranty. Larry's the man. Thanks, Penetrator. G'day, Noobers. Welcome to the Noob Spearo podcast. You're joining Turbo and I in studio. Today we've got Jeromy Gamble from Spearing Magazine. Now, Jeremy's already primed himself up for the interview. He's had a drink. What time of the day is it over there, Jeromy? Welcome to the show.
It is 5:16, so I am legally allowed to drink after work.
Awesome, man. We quite often sneak a rumbo in when we can.
No, we don't. We're professionals.
It makes our jokes just all the more better.
Well, to us, and we're more handsome, and we're better dancers.
No, it's a pleasure to have you on the show, joining us today, Jeromy. So, just for our listeners and us, how did you get started spearfishing, and what's driving you these days?
Born and raised Florida native. Moved out west for a short period of time. Came back here. Really, my diving started out chasing lobster. And then I'd say about 12 to 13 years ago, got serious on the spearfishing side of things. And it basically just consumed my life to the point of, every message board, every bit of information I could get my hands on in detail. And it was nonstop. So, that's pretty much what I do at this point. I mean, we've evolved that into owning a spearfishing magazine and still consuming my entire life.
And your wife, Becky, and you both run the Spearing Magazine. Does she spear as well?
No. Becky will, no. Becky's idea of going out on a boat and getting in the water is knee-deep at the sandbar with a vodka and lemonade in her hand.
Yeah. That's good.
She's done a course with Ted Hardy. She did 40 feet. We did an article on it a couple of years ago. She went literally from having a panic attack. I mean, laying on her back like a cat. If you were drowning a cat, that's what it looked like. She went from there, and with Ted's ability to basically mind trick people into their fine, to doing rock, paper, scissors at 40 feet in about 35, 40 minutes. It was absolutely impressive.
I wonder what he could do with Turbo.
Probably 30 feet.
That's not right. The guests aren't meant to get on your crappy jokes.
I can't, but Jeromy is just straight onto you. This is excellent. So you started off in Florida. You've stuck around in Florida. I know I listened to your episode on the Spear with Roman recently, and you've dove with some fantastic dudes like GR Tar, and I heard some of the stories. What drives you these days with spearfishing? Where does your motivation come from, apart from the magazine?
I mean, really, for me, spearfishing is relaxing. So even more so nowadays. I mean, it kind of went from an obsession of learning the sport and getting better at the sport and progressing and diving deeper to almost backing up some and just forgetting about all that. Taking care of my gear, diving with the close friends that I've got around me that enjoy just going out and having a good day and shooting something for dinner and making fun of each other and enjoying diving. For me, it's relaxing. It's the competitive side. I want nothing to do with it whatsoever. It just doesn't fit my needs.
Yeah, we're much the same. Enjoy getting out with the boys and just bringing home a feed, having a good time and drinking too much beer on the way in. We were discussing a little bit about that before the show.
Yeah.
So back in your early days, let's take a sort of a backward step, Jerry.
Sure.
When you were starting off, what were some of the big obstacles for you? Did you start with hand-me-down equipment? Everyone sort of seems to have their own obstacles. What were yours?
Definitely equipment was the biggest one. I come from a competitive swimming background, so the diving part wasn't super challenging, but more just technique. I mean, I didn't have any. As far as diving technique, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I thought I did, coming from a competitive swimming background, but I really truly didn't. And gear, I mean, stalking fish, I mean, no clue. Figured the faster you swim, the easier it is to shoot fish, which I learned early on was a piss poor idea.
Yeah.
You know, but gear, you know, my uncle's scuba dove years before, he had a couple of old Sea Hornets. You guys have Sea Hornets?
Yeah, man. Everyone starts with them all over the world. I don't know who distributes those things, but they did a bloody good job.
Yeah.
They're everywhere.
And they still exist. Like there's here's what makes no sense. They have plastic triggers, plastic muzzles. Like whatever they made those things out of, they're the most durable piles of garbage I've ever used in my entire life.
Yeah.
But
I don't even know where they make them.
Seriously, they're like herpes. You don't want them, but they just hang around forever. You know?
There is something Turbo can speak authoritatively on.
Because you kissed me in my sleep.
Hey, there's never any kissing.
Nah, this is going downhill.
It's going downhill fast.
Just cuddling.
Okay, so you talked a bit about stalking and equipment, like in specific with stalking fish. What so you said you like sort of aiming up and trying to swim competitively at them by the sounds of it. How did you learn to approach fish? What was sort of the process of that learning?
I mean, honestly, it was just diving often and having the opportunity to dive with guys like GR Tar and watching. Yeah. I mean, I think instead of people running their mouths nowadays, you know, you see on Facebook and Instagram and everybody's this uber professional, even though they've been diving for like 7 months. If they actually took some time to get the opportunity to dive with guys that are much better than them and keep their mouth shut and just watch those other guys dive, the amount of information they'd learn, it would change everything about their diving.
Yeah, okay.
You know, watching GR dive, even if he didn't know I was watching him dive, just the way he stalks fish, the way, and I'm not rubbing up on GR, but the guy is a beast. I mean, he's a super deep diver, super good at shooting fish. He understands just the way they function, and he does extremely well. And I was just lucky enough to dive with him and kind of pick up some of the tidbits and crumbs that he left behind.
Yeah. And I mean, the more of these guys you can dive with and observe, they all do it. Like they all do something quite differently, but they all get good results out of it. And I think you can take kind of like one thing from every guy you go with. And I mean, I've gone out with guys that are actually pretty shit, but they still do like a couple of really clever things.
Yep, absolutely.
And I think, just observing and staying humble does help with that. So when you did start stalking fish successfully, what technique did you probably use first?
I mean, I've listened to the vast majority of you guys' podcasts, and that it amazes me what some of the people, what they choose. Not amazes, it's interesting to listen to. But I like, depending on the visibility we're dealing with, like off our coast where I live, most of the time we've got a murk layer on top, and that may extend, a quarter or half the distance to the bottom, whatever the depth may be. As soon as I get through that murk layer, I tend to just kind of pan out. And as soon as I can see the bottom and see the fish, I'll just hang out there. And pretty much pick, see what's going on, look around, get an idea of what the structure's like, get an idea where a higher spot may be or a lower spot, or where there may be a cave or where there may be some bait holding. And then I'll go back up. And I'll do that 3 or 4 or 5 times until I get a good idea of what the actual bottom structure's like and where the fish are holding. And then I'll do a dive, same thing, through the murk, pan out. I mean, I may be 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 feet off the bottom. And I'll pick one fish, and I'll just slowly angle towards that fish, stop kicking, 10, 15, 20 feet from that fish, and just essentially fall. I mean, at that point, I'm in a sink phase if I'm weighted properly, and I'll just fall straight at that fish. And 99% of the time, I think Andrew Quiznos has talked about this, those fish will roll up on their side and look at you.
Yeah.
And it's you get the same shot over and over and over and over again. It's just this right in the side of the gill plate or right in the side of the head. It's the easiest shot in the world because you're not coming in from an angle of, being a predator. By the time they realize you're there and they feel you with a ladder line, because in reality you're not moving. They just feel your presence as you're sinking towards them. They just turn and look at you like, "What are you doing?" And you shoot them in the face.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about this technique. It's sort of like an overwatch, and then you hone in on what you want to do. I've used it successfully at times, and then I've gone long stretches where it hasn't really worked for me, and I've done more of an Spearo type thing. But I just find it interesting. Like, I think you sort of honed in on it. You've got to have your weighting correct, and you've really got to let inertia do the work, like when you get within range.
Yeah.
But I don't know why it works for me sometimes, and then other times it just doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, we do it with black grouper. Black grouper, well, everything really. Blacks, gags, hogfish, almost anything that's on the bottom. If you drop at that angle, I don't know what angle it'd be, 40 degrees or so, around there somewhere. I mean, if you're not dropping directly on top of them, but you're not at too low of an angle to where they can see you coming in, to the point where they have to turn to see you, then they almost always do. And as soon as they roll on their side like that, they don't swim well like that. So they're not going to make that, boom move where they take off. So they give you a solid second and a half to line up a good shot.
Yeah. All right, cool.
That's a really good insight.
Yeah, I'm enjoying that. That's a good one, actually. I'm glad you've listened to so many of our shows, because it's actually a different sort of technique that I hadn't thought about for
Really
a while.
good having a fan on the show. Like,
You guys,
a fan.
you guys do a
We're
hell
calling
of a
him a
job.
fan.
I enjoy it.
Thanks, man.
I was taking the piss, but
He
anyway.
was fishing for a compliment too, so he did well.
Validation.
All right, Jerry, we'll go back a little bit. Maybe you want to pick out a fish in recent times, but maybe a memorable fish story that you've taken possibly in recent times that you were just super stoked with.
Memorable fish story. Can it be one that was super memorable and we didn't do very well?
Yeah,
That's fine,
that's
man.
even better.
Far away.
All right, so
That's an honest story then.
we got the opportunity to go to Cancun. The owner, the gentleman who owns, I believe it's 5 or 6 Hard Rock resorts, invited us to come. The staff come there, go diving for 4 days. It was on his dime, which was awesome. It's an all-inclusive resort. The place is badass.
Oh, wow.
So we go out with this gentleman named David Vincino, and we're in Cancun. And the first day we get out, I believe you have to clear like a nature preserve, or a marine preserve, excuse me. That's, I believe, 25 miles from shore out. Once you extend past that, it drops to 1,600 feet.
Wow.
And then comes back up to this thing called the Aerosmith Bank. And the bank is like 72, 75 feet, somewhere right in there. So we have 200 feet of visibility. I don't know what that is in meters, sorry. But it's
a lot.
It's a long freaking way.
It's 60 meters. Yeah, no, it's a long way.
So the current is, and this is no exaggeration, it was solid a 4 to 5 knot current. So we're clearly live boating. They're taking us up current, dropping us in the water, and we're drifting over this pretty low rock structure. We have 200 feet of visibility or more. I really don't know. I mean, it just seemed like air. And we're watching these grouper. I mean, the biggest black grouper I've ever. I can't even begin to lie about how big they were, because they're just that big. You're just, every drift, you're staring at these fish, and they're swimming away from you down current. So they're probably 35 yards down current of us, swimming away as we're drifting. So there's no way to get to them.
Yeah.
Really. And at one point, finally, this is like 7 or 8 drifts in, one of them got dumb, and he rolled up around this little rock that was probably the size of a small car and just sat on top of it facing up current. So I was like, finally, I'm going to drop on this thing. So you got to start your dive way the hell up current in order to even think about getting, intersecting the fish at where this rock's located.
Yeah.
And I get down there and I line up, and he's still sitting there, and I was like, holy crap, this worked. Like, I really didn't expect this to pan out in a positive way. Line up, pull the trigger, shaft hits the fish right behind the shoulder, he rolled under the rock and immediately broke the cable shooting line I had. The gun hit me in the face. You know, I'm at 65 feet ish. You know, I got a 63-inch 4-banded gun that just drilled me in the nose. I'm swimming back to the surface, you know, trying not to pass out, bleeding out of my face. Fortunately, the rest of the guys were there to keep track of me not dying. But the whole trip was like that. We tried a different spot for the final 3 days, and there were these pinnacles. Same problem. It was 168 feet deep. The pinnacles came up to 75-ish, and we had 300 feet of visibility. Wow. And we're trying to dive and hit the tops of these pinnacles, and you can watch these giant fish swimming around in 160 feet of water. But, I mean, nobody I was with could get anywhere near the damn things. I sure as hell wasn't trying.
Yeah. Well, and current makes it deeper, you know, like adds a huge factor of difficulty.
Slows you down,
It sucks. Like, I can't stand live boating. If you've got to constantly get in the boat and go up current and drop in the water, you can't do a good breathe up. I can't relax.
Yeah.
Finally, after 3 hours, I'm like, screw it. I'm going to sit here and shake these flashers and shoot wahoo. Screw all those reef fish.
Yeah, I think there's a real art to it. I've never got good at it either. Like, we might dive, say, 60 or 70 feet when we're going good and there's no current, and then you're diving in current, and all of a sudden you're a 30-foot diver, and you've got to watch that you don't lose your gear. Yeah. Because the current's going that hard. If a fish holds up on you, it just buries you and you float, and you're not going to get it back. So there's some real hazards and risks to be aware of when you do start live boating in current. It's,
live boat. I've never even heard the term until now.
But I'm gonna roll with it. It's now part of my vernacular.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeromy.
Anytime.
He's expanding our horizons. Yeah. Okay. So so the black groper, you smashed your face, and then you decided to hunt some wahoo. You had a bit more success with that.
Yeah,
I take it.
I shot. I think I shot 2.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, 2 wahoo then. Our photographer, Christopher Landers, finally, he was like, can I grab the gun instead of taking pictures? I was like, knock yourself out. So he jumped in. Of course, 5 minutes later, he'd never shot a wahoo.
Ah, awesome.
5 minutes later, one swims right up to him.
Beautiful.
Love that. He stones it. We get 36 pictures of him with that fish. I think like 4 of them were in focus. It was...
That's always the way. The cameraman, he always gets the shittest photos taken of him.
Yeah.
The poor guys, Turbo's always complaining about it too, because the other guys on the boat, they're all friggin' hopeless and can't be bothered taking photos most of the time.
Exactly.
So it's good value. I haven't shot a wahoo yet. Turbo, you taking a wahoo down?
No, not yet. No.
What about some hunting tips for guys wanting to take down their first wahoo? What did you learn when you started hunting them, Jeromy?
Well, I've had two real good experiences with wahoo. The first one I really don't think counts because we just happened to time a trip down to the Keys in South Florida and jump into the most epic wahoo congregation anyone's ever heard of.
Yeah, wow.
It was... I'll tell the story later because I know where we're going with this. But, yeah, the biggest technique that I've found that works is clearly flashers. I mean, whoever's sitting there shaking the flashers usually is going to be the guy that gets the wahoo unless one of the guys you're diving with is an asshole and shoots it out of underneath you. That's pretty much what's going to happen with wahoo. If you sit wahoo are pretty curious. I know people are like, don't look at them in the face. Yeah. I think that's a crock of crap. I've looked at every single wahoo. I mean, clearly, I'm looking at them, and I've had them swim right. You know, once you do your dive, they'll spook off slowly usually. But if you just sit there and stop and just hang out, like don't move, don't be threatening, just sit there, they usually make this big sweeping turn and come back to check you out one more time just to make sure they know what you are. And 99% of the time, you can get a shot on them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, cool. I remember when we were talking to Jager Crossingham from Freedive Fiji. I don't know if you listened to that interview, but he talked about doing this exhale dive, which would probably work well with what you're talking about. You're just sitting there and you just let most of your air out, and then so you become negatively buoyant. You drop down 3
Horizontal
meters
in the water.
and then all of a sudden they're sort of there in front of you doing the curious thing. So I'm going to try that when I do eventually come to find and
You
see
just
one.
learn to hold your breath normally.
Well,
That'd be a start.
True,
I usually weight myself a tad bit heavy when we're hunting wahoo, just because most of the time they're in the top 30 feet of the column.
Yeah.
So if you weight yourself, I mean, you may be in 100 feet of water, you may be in 400 feet of water, who knows? But if you weight yourself to be neutral at 30 feet, excuse me, you can usually, get to that 30-foot mark or slightly above and hang comfortably. Now, clearly, you don't want to be doing any deeper dives, and clearly you want to have a dive buddy close to you, because if for some reason you were to black out, you're weighted like a brick, and you're going to end up at the bottom in 400 feet. But I usually go a little tiny, maybe a pound and a half, 2 pounds heavy than what I normally would in a wahoo situation.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, cool. Talking about flashes just quickly, on Instagram earlier, I've been following these guys Buzz Bomb Flashes for a while. They look like they've got some wicked setups. They're in your neck of the woods, aren't they?
Yeah. I'm pretty confident that they didn't they steal that idea from Coates?
Oh, possibly. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, you can make it yourself, but now someone makes it for you, which is even better.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Flat out, mate,
I was looking at them. I don't really like making my own shit. I just like buying it and using it, and it does a good job. And I thought those Buzz Bomb Flashes, they look like they're just made to order. Hang it on a Rob Allen chicken float.
Yep.
Drop it down. I'm getting a wahoo. That's kind of what I was thinking at it with my pure consumer. Don't want to make gear kind of mindset.
I'll just drink the box wine.
I've heard they work extremely well. Everyone I know who currently has one and who has used it absolutely loves it and has had really, really good success with it.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, we even on that trip to Caddo Reef, we actually had some old fishing skirts that were just destroyed, and we wanted to tow a few lures around.
Yeah.
So we just did the same thing with, I think it was like a foily popcorn, popcorn packet.
Yeah.
Just did a zip tie around the thing, threw it in, and it caught fish.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, I've had like old CDs because none of us have got CD players anymore.
No.
That I heard they work pretty good.
You just won't part with that Rod Stewart collection, will you? You just will not part
John
with it.
Farnham, bro. John Farnham. And let's not forget Michael Bolton. Too, but before we get even awkwarder.
Good.
Yeah.
Righto, Dad. All right. So, all right, we better move on. All right, Jeromy, what's the toughest situation? You're a fan, so this was formerly the scariest moment, but one of the bean counters at Noob Spearo changed it to toughest situation. I didn't green like this at all. He also took away my Fast 5 facts for noobs. Just distraught about that. We'll talk about that later. All right, so what is the toughest situation that you've been in the ocean? What did you learn from it, and how did you overcome it?
It was actually on a wahoo trip. We were down in the Keys, and we'd been diving for 3 days, I think. So, I mean, my mammalian dive reflex was kicked in. I was diving really, really well. And we ended up going to this wreck, the Vandenberg, and I don't know what depth it is. I can't remember. It's really unimportant. But we're chumming like crazy. This was like one of those last-ditch efforts. No one had shot a damn thing. We're just raining hell down with chum, trying to get anything to come in. And there was no wahoo. Like, they just weren't there. We had great visibility. I think the top of the deck of the wreck is at like 110. It might be 140 or 150 feet-ish, I think, to the bottom. And
So a good depth for burlying, but it'd take a fair bit of work, or chumming as you call it.
Oh, yeah, we were the amount of shit we were dropping in the water was ridiculous. I mean, so because of that, we were actually getting a bunch of the bottom species, mutton snapper, black grouper, and other things, following the chum, competing with one another as they worked themselves up this cut up bait.
Yep.
So, of course, I see this, and I was like, okay, I'm going to drop with all this, because the captain was continuously dropping all this down, nonstop.
I love
it. It was
that.
like an elevator of dead shit. So I follow it down, and I'm dropping and dropping and dropping, and all of a sudden I see this really nice mutton snapper, and I was like, oh, that's a really nice mutton snapper. And I get closer to it, and he's working his way upwards, eating chum, enjoying himself. And finally, we get close enough, and all of a sudden, it was after I shot him. I line up and I shoot him and I stone him, which was lucky. Excuse me. And right as I stone him, I hear this beeping sound. And I'm thinking to myself, what the hell is this beeping sound? And then I realized I had set my alarm on my watch for depth. And my depth alarm was at 110 feet.
Yeah, wow.
And I was like at that point, I had never comfortably been, this was 8 years ago or so. I had never been comfortably to 110 feet. I mean, especially shooting fish.
Yeah.
Because those are two very different things. I mean, free diving to 110 feet and going down and shooting something and dragging it pissed off to the surface are two different things.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I mean, luckily I rolled this mutton and I looked up and we had great visibility and it was the best feeling in the world. My closest dive buddy, Alvin Holmes, I looked to the surface when I realized I might have just killed myself. And I see Alvin. And I point at him, and I point at my eyes, and then I point at my chest, like, you watch me. And he gave me the okay symbol. I mean, I can see him on the surface from 100 feet. So I just opened my weight belt, so if I did black out, it would fall off me, and started kicking to the surface. And I get to the surface, and he's right there next to me, and I, do my hook press. Everything's fine. Put my weight belt, clip it back on. And, he looks at me and goes, don't do that dumb shit ever again. But I mean, that was a scary moment. That was the first real time I had been in a situation that I didn't realize I was in, and I had to make the choice. Like everything I had learned in my freedive course kicked in. Like, calm down, don't freak the hell out. Relax, open your belt, stay streamlined, don't kick hard. All the things that I had learned went into play, and I think really the only way that I was able to do that was because I knew there was a guy right above me watching my ass.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's a good scary moment, and it's a good sort of I mean, I think you communicated well the fear. It is scary looking up at the surface, and you've already maybe got a little bit of contractions, and you're looking up at the surface, and you've got a long way to pedal. It's good when you've got good buddies.
A little split second where you realise it, isn't it? It's like,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's when you get fixated on a fish, you can push depth.
Yeah.
And you're not even aware of it. Especially like over here in Australia, like you're in the Great Barrier Reef, and you can chase these things called coral trout, which are normally dumb as dog shit, but they get over 5 kilo, like 12 pound, and they just seem to like want to tease you and just take you further and further and further down the drop off. And by the time even if you've got a dive watch, you look around, you're buried, and so I mean it's something we're all guilty of at times, but that was a cool scary moment.
Yeah, well,
toughest situation. Sorry.
Yeah, so you want to bring it back. It's coming back.
It's not coming back.
It was scary, man. It was very scary. Trust me, cool. I was not.
When you were telling the story, also, I just wanted to say, Turbo was giving off all the hallmarks of anxiety. Like, he was vicariously living through your situation. I think he was remembering the last time he did it.
Here we go.
And, but he was actually just in the bathtub. And he was like looking up at the surface, which is only 20 centimetres away, and just being in that exact same feeling. So,
good one, Dad. Good dad joke, Dad.
Yeah, it's what I'm known for. It's what I'm known for.
It was all lead up. We had nothing at the back.
Oh, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. All right.
Well, moving on.
If you're new to spearfishing, I highly recommend listening to our episode Freediving for Spearfishing with Pete Ryder. Pete is an entrepreneur and an excellent freedive instructor, and he has come up with two great courses, the 10-metre freedive and the 5-minute freediver. I've used the 5-minute freediver to increase my bottom time, found it incredibly useful for my trip to the Coral Sea, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. His other course, the 10-metre freediver, is a great resource for those just starting out that literally want to get to 10 metres, and this course will help you learn proper breathing technique and some of the safety aspects associated with freediving.
Use the code Noob Spearo to save 20% on all of Pete's courses. He's put together this deal just for listeners of the show. That's at howtofreedive.com. Use the code NoobSpearo. God bless America, guys. We're joined by Spearing Magazine today. Isn't that right, Turbo?
Absolutely. You've done it again. USA. USA.
God bless America. Now, if you love America and you love spearfishing, get hold of Spearing Magazine at spearingmagazine.com.
Hoorah. That's all the American stuff I know.
Semper Fi.
Chevrolet. Detroit City.
Look, guys, the magazine is way better than Turbo's American accent. Probably better than mine too. You can check them out on social media, actually. Head on Facebook or Instagram, YouTube, whatever's your thing. Find Spearing Magazine and join those blokes. They put up some wicked photos and stories. Check them out, spearingmagazine.com.
Arr! It's time to open the Veterans Vault!
Right, you got to...
Veterans Vault, shall we?
Yeah, let's
all
hook
right,
in.
all right, Jeremy, you know all about the Veterans Vault, so take us deep into your area of expertise. I believe we're talking about chumming.
Just an
aka
elevator
burly,
elevator load of
just
chum,
loading
aka
up death
burly.
in the water column. Let's hear all about it.
So how did you get started chumming? And you know, what's your process now? Like how has it evolved?
I'm not even gonna try to take credit for this because I completely stole this from GR Tar.
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
All of it. So basically, what we do, especially when we're down in the Keys, because usually in the Keys you're diving deeper depths. You know, you're on the edge of the reef, where it usually rolls from like 30 to 45 feet down to like 115, 120 feet.
Okay.
So we'll anchor the boat up and we will make what's called sandballs. So you mix this up prior to going out on the boat, because otherwise, just trust me, do it before you leave. So you're mixing chum, which would be what you guys call burly, ground up chum.
Yeah.
And beach sand and crack corn. You guys have crack corn there?
Explain to me, what's crack corn?
Yeah, explain it a little
dried corn.
Yeah, we got that. Yeah, we do.
Okay.
It's like normally in a farm supply sort of thing, like for feeding animals or something.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, is
You
it?
can buy crack corn.
Yeah, you buy a 50-pound bag of that crap. So crack corn, oatmeal, or oats, not oatmeal, oats. And you take this entire mess of crap and you add a little water and you mix it together till you can make a ball about the size of a softball.
Yep.
Okay.
And the goal is you want it to be soft enough to slowly fall apart on the way down, but not completely fall apart. Like you want it to reach the bottom in about 3/4 of the size of the ball. You want to actually land on the bottom.
Right.
Wicked.
So you start with that. So you probably, and this is the most frustrating thing in the world. Fortunately, the majority of the people that I dive with understand that this is something that I just like to do myself. Like, don't get involved, because they start throwing them. And as soon as they start throwing them, they just fall apart. And the goal is to get an organized bunch of chum on the bottom. And once it starts to fall apart, that crack corn or the dried corn actually floats back out of the ball that's on the bottom. Right? So does some of the oats. So the goal is, what you're really doing is you're bringing all the bait fish to the spot that you're chumming. And as you bring the bait fish there, then you start, there's larger chunks clearly in that. You're starting to bring some of the larger, not big fish, but, the next step up from the bait fish.
Yep.
And then what we do is we have chunk bait. So normally we'll shoot a barracuda. I know people will be pissed that we're wasting a barracuda, but I don't care. We shoot a barracuda. We'll chunk that barracuda up, like in, just chunk it up and roll the chunks of the barracuda down right on top of where all of the chum landed.
Okay.
Yep.
So this whole process takes like 35, 40 minutes to do properly.
Yeah.
And then once you're down to basically a filleted barracuda, you cut that cuda into thirds and you roll the rest of the carcass right down on top of that whole mess of crap you just put on the bottom.
Okay.
So what you've got now, you can go to a spot and get in the water, and I've done this dozens of times, and you can't see a single fish. Nothing.
Yep.
When we do this, in the Keys especially, by the time we're done, you get in, there are black grouper everywhere. There are mutton snapper everywhere. There's usually mackerels up in the column. There might be a big bull shark around, but they're not that big of a deal. They're usually so fixated on the chum that you can shoot fish right off their shoulder and they don't even realize what's going on.
Yep.
But I mean, that process, and I've had to do it. Like, there's times where we weren't able to find a barracuda to chunk up. It doesn't work as well. Like, you really need to go through the sandballs, then the chunked up cuda, and then the carcasses, because you're bringing in the really small fish, then the little bit larger fish, then the little bit bigger fish. And at that point, what you're actually doing is causing competition. So you're drawing those black groupers and those muttons out of the deeper depths where they're comfortable up to something that's comfortable to dive and making them compete with one another. So they get we call it chum drunk. They get stupid. They're just dumb as hell. And the nice thing is, when you shoot a nice black grouper and you bring it to the surface, normally you can gut it right on the surface and drop probably 15 or 20 big pieces of barracuda that he ate right back down to where he came from and do it over again.
Yeah. Right. Wow.
It's
very cool.
It works good.
That's excellent.
It works extremely good. But if you the mixer's important, the cracked corn's important, the oatmeal's important, or oats, excuse me. All of it's important.
Jeromy, you're going to have to write us up a recipe so that we can get those consistencies right.
I'd be happy to.
Yeah, cool, excellent. Man. That'd be really good.
And I'm going to have to stop Shrek from chucking in a deep fryer and making the most of it himself.
not for human
Just keep a bucket of chicken on the boat and a bag of Doritos, and I'm happy.
He's a good corn-fed lad, isn't he?
This is what I put up with every time. Every time. His jokes have evolved though, so that's good. All right, Jeromy. So it sounds like a finely tuned process. Are there any drawbacks? Because while you were talking, I was sort of thinking, would this technique work in current? Probably not, I'm guessing.
Yeah, no, sure it does. Yeah, because that's with the sand. These things aren't light. You got probably a little over a half of the actual ball itself is sand. Yeah. So when you essentially you're not throwing it in the water, you're putting your hand in the water and letting it roll off your fingertips once your hand's already submerged.
Okay.
Right. So I mean, it has some decent weight to it, so it drops straight to the bottom.
Yeah, right. I can think of another problem too. It's if you got dudes that are real, it takes 30, 45 minutes, really going hard and just keeping everyone out of the water. Yeah, that'd be the big thing.
It's a huge problem. Huge problem.
Yeah, okay.
You just basically, it's like no one grab their gear, no one starts suiting up. You know, if you're throwing up, deal with it. Go to the back of the boat, add to the chum. I don't care. This is the process, and we're sticking to it. Period.
Such a caring guy.
A lot of spearfishing's like that too. Like when you're doing blue water stuff, everyone's got to be on the same page, like following a system. You know, anytime you're working in a team sort of effort, and I think by the sounds of it, a longer burly process is similar. Like everyone's got to be on the same page, and you, I guess you hear stories about it, and so you buy in and you just stick to it.
Yeah, it works. Yeah. You know, usually some people are a little bit skeptical the first day, but then after they see it work, no one complains. Everyone's like, you just do what you're going to do, and when you're done, you let us know when we get in. I'm like, perfect.
All right, I like it. We're going to try it. Yeah. Turbo's going to make those up on Sunday. On Sunday this week.
Got nothing better to do.
I'm just laying out the orders here. No. Any before we move on, have you got any more parting wisdom in there for chumming burleying?
No, that's pretty much my go-to thing. It just works extremely well. Extremely well.
Sounds like it. Cool.
You know, the other little trick, we do this from time to time. Like we have what's called yellowtail snapper in the Keys. Mm-hmm. And they're extremely tasty, but they're really hard to shoot. Like they are not dumb at all.
Okay.
And they're not that big. Like a huge one, which we call them flags, they're like a big one's 5-6 pounds, like 22 to 24 inches long.
And
they're pretty much impossible to shoot. But if you get in the same, you do the whole chum process that I already talked about, and then you take one of the biodegradable Ziploc bags, the ones that actually dissolve in water. and you fill that with the same mixture of crap that you're mixing up in the chum.
Yeah.
And you leave the bag, you zip it half closed, but leave half of it open, and drop that right into the middle of the chum. The yellowtail, the big ones, they'll spook all the small ones away, but they'll stick their head inside the bag to eat the corn.
Yeah, right.
So you literally just drop to the bottom. You're a foot away from this fish that you normally couldn't get 20 feet away from, and shoot it in the face. I mean, it's easy.
Chum drunk.
Chum drunk.
I've heard you shoot it in the face thing before. Yeah. You've got some. Have you got some merch with that written on it or something?
Say that again.
Have you got some merch like hats and shirts and stuff with that on it? I think I've seen them around, eh?
Yeah, we got hats and short sleeve shirts and long sleeve shirts. It's just it's what we do. Most people don't get it. People who clearly don't spearfish have no idea what the hell we're talking about, which I think it makes it even better.
Yeah, just shoot those chum drunk bastards in the face.
Yep. Exactly.
It's definitely Spearo talk, that's for sure.
Yep.
All right, next part of the show. Turbo, what do you got, buddy?
It's the funniest thing. What's the funniest moment or thing that you've experienced out on the water while spearfishing?
Funniest thing. Oh, okay.
You've listened to a few.
I hadn't even thought about this. It just clicked in my head. So, again, we're in Cancun, right? And it's the last day of the trip. And Christopher Landers, the photographer, he was dying to get in the water with a bait ball with a bunch of sailfish and get some images, get some photos. And, of course, we had been blowing him off the entire time because no one gives a crap about sailfish or him taking pictures. We just want to shoot stuff. Because, I mean, in Mexico, I think you're allowed to shoot sailfish, but we weren't gonna cross that line. Basically, it was like, don't shoot any sailfish. No one wants to go to jail in Mexico. Yeah, it would be bad. So on the way in, the last day, we see all these birds and this bait ball and dolphins. And Chris is like, please, just let me get in. So we pull up, and Chris jumps in the water, and he's like, there's pilot whales everywhere. And dolphins and birds, and they'd clearly just eaten some type of really giant squid. I mean, I'm not saying it was a giant squid, but the bitch was big. It was a big chunks of squid. So everybody else gets excited. There's like 25, 30 of these pilot whales. Yeah. Everybody else jumps in, and I'm like, no. Like, I've got a thing with animals with big brains and teeth. I don't get involved. I'm not I'm not diving with killer whales. I'm not diving with pilot whales. I'm not. It just doesn't sound smart to me. So all the guys, the whole staff jumps in, and they're swimming around, and they keep popping their heads up, and Chris keeps yelling. They keep swimming under us and smiling at me, and of course I can't see this because I'm on the boat because I wasn't getting in the middle of this crap. But what I am watching is there's two groups of divers. There's 4 divers and 5 divers, and they're separated by about 30 feet. Well, what's actually happening is the big, giant male, what we thought were pilot whales, which were not pilot whales. They were actually false killer whales, which are not friendly. Yeah,
he's corralling them together.
It's exactly what he was doing. He was herding them into this little tiny group.
Shit. It's like Jurassic Park, but in the sea.
Exactly like Mexico. Jurassic Park. So all of a sudden, these guys are all back to back, and they still think they're okay. Like, none of them really realize what just happened. And then all of a sudden, that big male false killer whale comes up and starts tail slapping all the way around them on the surface. And I mean close, like really close. And I'm like, screw this. I told the captain, I'm like, get him out of the water. Like, I don't need someone to die in Mexico on my watch. Get him out of the water now. So they all get up back on the boat, and they're like, well, that was really cool until, it got weird. And I'm like, they were gonna eat you. Their goal was to eat you. They weren't being friendly. They weren't smiling at you. They were trying to get you all together, and they were gonna kill you all. That was the goal. and the captain's got the boating gear, and everyone's back in the boat. A couple guys are a little rattled because they realize that they almost just died. And Chris is still just going through the camera like, oh, this is an amazing picture. Oh, this is an amazing picture. And we look behind the boat, and there's 20 false killer whales following the boat because we're at idle speed. And that big bastard that was smiling at the guys was literally 8-10 feet right off the back of the boat in the wash, like kept coming out of the water and staring at us like, come on, guys, get back in. We're friendly. It was insane. Super insane. I'm so glad I didn't get in the water.
It was hungry for some gringos.
No question. Yeah, we did at the time. We didn't realize they were. We still at the time thought they were pilot whales. Now, when we got home, Chris started putting up a bunch of photos on Instagram and Facebook of these, pilot whales, and somebody informed him that those were not pilot whales; they were false killer whales, and they occasionally kill people.
Wow, far out. Well, that was a good, funny moment that was sort of scary. So
yeah, it was funny to me after the fact. The fact that no one died made it really funny.
Yeah. If you like McEwen's Lager and we jammy judges, then Staunch Industries is for you. That's right, apparel for real men. Get that up, you cult. StaunchIndustries.com.
Today's show is brought to you by our brand new ebook, 99 Tips to Get Better at Spearfishing. How many tips in that book, Trek?
There's well more than 99. You can find the book on Amazon.com.
Why is it called 99 tips if there's more than 99 tips in there?
Look, I've summed it up into like 99 groups of tips.
So you're saying that those tips are so value-packed, there's more than one tip per tip?
Just a value-driven, actionable book.
So if you were to put an actual real number on that, how many tips should it be called?
247.
247 tips. So you're paying for 99, but you're getting the value of 247 tips.
Chris Cates agrees with me. He said, even after 30 years of spearfishing, there are tips in there that I never thought of. So for someone only a few years into spearing, this is a must-have resource. Cheers for that, Chris.
So get online, check it out on Amazon.
99
tips to get better at spearfishing.
Cool. Next part of the show. I know you're a bit of a gear dude, Jeromy. So what's in your dive bag? Head to toe. What's your go-to kit there in the keys?
Wetsuit. I really hate wetsuits for starters. I just do. I don't like any of them. But the one that I wear the most is my Salvamar HT Weld. It's like a shark skin on the outside and lined on the inside.
Okay.
It's just
that works for you?
It's super comfortable. I mean, I've got, I don't know how many wetsuits in the garage, but it's just really stretchy. It's really soft. It's really comfortable. I like the fact that it doesn't have any kind of lycra or anything on the outside. So when I'm in the boat, the wind isn't blowing through the suit and cooling me off and getting me cold the whole point of the damn thing is to keep you warm.
Yeah.
And it's still durable enough to where, I mean, I've had that suit for probably 3 or 4 years now, and it doesn't have a single tear in it. And I'm not easy on them at all. Like, I'm constantly up in caves and rocks and not paying a damn bit of attention to what I'm running into on the boat. So,
I think that's what you want out of your suit too, isn't it, to be honest?
Yeah.
You want it to be durable enough that you can do whatever you want to it. And I mean, I don't know, some guys seem to, expect 3 or 4 years out of a suit. I'm like, dude, if you wash it properly and you look after it, you might get 4 seasons out of it. Personally, I think that's a really shit hot suit. Yeah. I had a really soft, comfy suit. I only got 2 seasons out of it, but those 2 seasons were really good, and then it sort of fell apart.
Yeah.
It was one of the European brand ones.
Yep.
I've had a Cressy suit, but it didn't hold its shape for some reasons. We won't talk about possibly too many buckets of chicken. Now that I've trimmed up a little bit, it just doesn't fit quite right. So, but wetsuits are definitely a funny thing. Yep. What about booties and gloves?
Gloves. I actually just got to try these new gloves, and I like them. I didn't think I was going to like them. We're going to do a review in the May issue of the magazine on these gloves, but they're made by a company called Blackfin, and they make those gloves. They're black, clearly, and they've got the webbing between the fingers.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so those I don't recommend because those get caught in everything.
Yeah.
But they make 5 or 6 other pairs of gloves, or not 5 or 6, 3 or 4 other pairs of gloves that don't have the webbing between the fingers that are extremely nice gloves. Like, I've used them now for at least 8 months. There's no rips, there's no tears because there's no seams on them. You know, they're not a cold water glove because they're very, very thin and very form-fitting, which is nice because you don't feel like you've got a glove on.
Yeah.
They also make booties. Now, their dive socks have, like, the little weird toe thing that goes between the big toe and the toe next to it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Which is kind of can be weird at times, feeling that.
I think that can be good when you're doing shore diving, though, to be honest. Like, you know how if you've got a full open sock, like your foot moves around and your toes can actually puncture it. It's particularly if you're wearing the 1.5 or 2 mil booties. So maybe that'll work in that application. But if you're diving off a boat, it'd probably piss you off, I'd imagine.
It's not that bad. It was just different. You know, I just wasn't used to it. Yeah. It was every once in a while you're like, what in the hell is between my toes? But I really, I'm very impressed. Up until then, I still wear my hammerhead booties all the time because they're super comfortable and they're not very slippery. And the last thing you want to do is, you know, shoot a fish, get in the boat. Someone else had just shot something and threw it on the deck, and you jump in and just bust your ass because there's 2 feet of fish slime.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I can relate to that one. Some of the guys don't seem to like killing their fish in the water, and they throw them over the side, particularly like big grouper and cod. This big slime balls. And they chuck them over, kicking around. There's blood and slime everywhere. It's just good fun, isn't it?
I tell everybody who goes on my boat, I'm like, rules of the boat. Whatever goes on the boat is dead before it goes on the boat.
Yeah.
I mean, first and foremost, because I've gotten into, we have these fish called sheep's head.
Yeah.
They're black and white.
They look awesome.
Yeah, they're black and white striped. They've got spines on them like hypodermic needles. I don't shoot them because somehow throughout the day, whether I make it the entire day and I'm trying to pull a fish out of the cooler to clean it, I end up with one of those big ass spines buried like between my fingers. So I don't shoot them anymore. But I've had, leading up to this, people just would shoot a sheep's head mid-body and basically shot put it into the boat from 10 feet away. And I get in the boat with a fish and there's blood dripping from my top. It's it looks like somebody killed a village inside the boat. And it's like, and there's one lone 4-pound sheep's head that's completely bled to death and given me six hours of work to clean this boat.
Yeah. And another point with that, I mean, Turbo wrote a really good article about Icky Jimmy on our site, but like, if you let a fish die like that, not only has the fish had an unpleasant ending, but you've lost all the good eating quality out of that fish as well. Like, mate, you just brain them, bleed them in the water, it's done deal. Yeah. Unless there's sharks around, there's no excuse not to.
Even if there is sharks. I mean, the sharks, you know, there's this whole thing with sharks. I mean, clearly on Instagram, everybody thinks sharks are dogs at this point, which they're not. But you can still, you know, gill and gut a fish in the water if there's sharks around, and they're not going to immediately rape you. You know, it can be done. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. Okay, cool. We're still in your dive bag.
Yep.
So we've covered booties, gloves. What's your sort of spear gun rack look like?
I'm the guy that goes to a restaurant and orders the same thing at that restaurant every time I go there.
Yep.
That's just my thing. So
do you order the 24-piece feed for yourself? Like something else I know?
Yeah, sometimes. Very possible. Guns.
He's having a dig at me there, Jeromy, more than you. But anyway, another KFC joke. He's getting predictable.
Oh, I can't help it. I want it.
So what's your predictable spear gun you love?
Inshore, like anything inside of 70 feet, I shoot a 55-inch Koa roller gun.
Okay. I've seen them around. They look like a slick bit of weaponry.
65 inch.
No,
55.
55.
Which is about a 120 centimeter, I believe.
Yep.
Or 130 maybe. Oh, is it?
Yep, should be a 110.
I'm miles off.
That's exactly what I use, the 110 roller. Good choice. Good choice.
Nice.
It's a mid handle. I cannot shoot rear handle guns. I'm horrible at it. I've tried multiple times. I mean, countless times. I can't shoot the damn things at all. I'm a mid handle guy, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
So
you're a field shooter.
Say again.
You're more like a field shooter. You shoot out of like you just look where you want to aim and you shoot. You don't actually sight down the barrel.
Oh no, I couldn't even begin to tell you how I am because I don't. I point the gun at the fish and shoot the fish. I have no idea what happens.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I didn't mean to interrupt your train of thought there. But,
so what are we using for offshore?
Well, if I'm doing deep reef stuff, anything deeper than 60 feet, I've got a 63-inch death stick. It's a 3 or 4 band configuration with a big Ula sub reel. It was actually Ken Jones used to manufacture these guns called death sticks. They're gorgeous. Oh. He's out of St. Pete, Florida. And my uncle he used to do cabinetry work on yachts 50 years ago.
Yep.
And he had saved like 7 boards of teak that, as he explained to me, they had to hand pick the teak off the trucks because they were full of shrapnel from Vietnam at the time.
Oh, wow.
So he still had these boards of teak, and he gave me 4 of them, and I gave them to Ken, and Ken made them into a gun in the configuration that I wanted, which is awesome. So, yeah, that's my deep reef gun.
Yeah. And having a bit of a story behind your gun seems to give you a bit more attachment to it as well, I guess.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the woods, my uncle got it 50 years ago. It's been 10 years since it's been made, so I don't know how old the teak is. 90 years old.
Wow.
It's a cool piece. I love that gun. It shoots super duper well. It was my blue water gun until I got my blue water gun.
Okay, what's your blue water gun?
67-inch Sea Sniper.
Okay. Yeah. This is Chris Chapui, is that his name?
Chaput, yep.
Yeah, okay. I've heard of him. I've seen his guns around as well. Again, they look like a slick bit of timber. You prefer your timber barrel?
Yeah, I love that gun. It's a bad bitch.
Yeah.
When I was taught, he told me he's like, I was going back and forth between the 67 and the 72. And Chris is just an upfront, honest kind of guy. And he's like, look, are you going to go actively chase giant tuna? And I said, no. And he said, then get the 67. He's like, because the 67 with an 11/32 shaft and a slip tip will punch through a 220-pound cow tuna 20 feet away. And I was like, that's all I need because good enough. Sold.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you wanted to talk about equipment-wise? We've covered off guns and your wetsuits and that. Mask and snorkel, what are you using there?
People talk about J snorkels. I have the Rife Stable, the one that has the big giant valve on the bottom and all the dry apparatus on the top.
Yep.
And you hear all the time people are like, you don't need that crap. I disagree. If you're trying to lay on the surface and do a relaxed breathe up and you're constantly dealing with water in your mouth, it's a pain in the ass. Like I'd rather have a dry snorkel and deal with some lack of hydrodynamic, crap connected to it on my dive than have a shitty breathe up on the surface and have a beautiful dive. The air is the important part.
Yeah. And being comfortable when you do finally go to dive. Yeah, sure. I'm familiar with that compromise too. I've had both. I'm back on the J snorkel now, but sometimes I get pissed off with it. But when I actually duck dive, I'm like, when I actually do go diving, I do enjoy having that sort of extra bit of, glide through the water, I guess, without those things with the valves and the stuff on the top, they like flap against your chin and stuff on the way down sometimes. So there is a compromise there. Actually,
mine, I learned from Ted Hardy in immersion. If you take, I don't have any type of snorkel keeper on my snorkel or mask. I just take my mask, and you know how in the back of your mask it splits into two pieces to go around the back of your head?
Yeah.
If you take your snorkel and stuff it between those two and let go, that's the perfect position for your snorkel to be in when your face is in the water, because it's directly behind your head.
Okay.
Right.
Now, when you do a dive, your snorkel's out of the way because technically it's behind your head. The snorkel just spins to where it's literally behind your neck almost.
Okay, cool.
It works really well.
Right, I might try that next time I've got one of those fancy snorkels on.
Yeah. Make sure it's
You're too
yellow
cheap
or
to
pink.
buy anything fancy.
See, it's time for Noob Spearo's Fast 5 Facts. Ay.
All right, next part of the show, there is no more Fast 5 Facts for Noobs Turbo. Have another sook.
Let's just see what Jeremy's prepared himself for.
Let's do Spearo Q&A. So,
Sorry, Jeremy.
again, this is a faster paced round of questions. What's the single best piece of advice you've been given for spearfishing?
Have fun.
Yep.
Love it.
Who's been the most influential person or people in your spearfishing?
Probably GR Tar, Alvin Holmes. I'm going to give it just to those two.
Yep.
Cool. And during your... How long have you been spearfishing, Jeremy?
Seriously, 12 years.
Okay. So during your 12 years of serious spearfishing, what's the biggest lesson you've learned? You can't say have fun again.
No, to not shoot the first thing you see.
Okay, cool. All right, what current challenge do you face in your spearfishing, and how are you approaching it?
I don't really have any challenges, to be honest with you. It's just the goal is to go out there and relax and have fun, and I've kind of got that covered. So there's no, it's new, find new products, try new products. I mean, at this point, it's getting information for our readers. It's finding new cool products that are pushing the envelope and why they're progressing the sport and why the readers should consider purchasing them. As far as personal diving, I mean, I just do it for fun. It's super fun and relaxing, and there's really no challenge.
Okay, cool. This might tie in neatly with the last question. Who is the best person to go spearfishing with, and why?
The guy that's going to watch your ass for real.
Yeah.
Like that guy. People
Turbo's always watching my ass. We're in the studio and he's watching my ass. I'm like, bro, there's no blackout risk here. Like, what are you doing? And he's just ogling me.
Turbo, you're supposed to be watching his ass in the water, not out of the water.
I'm watching it inflate over the years.
Back to the chicken.
So predictable, but also enjoyable. No, that's awesome, man. So, Jeromy, people can find you at spearingmagazine.com. They can subscribe to your digital edition anywhere. They can buy the physical copy and have it shipped to their doorstep.
Yep.
You're in most spearfishing retailers with your magazine, I'd imagine.
Yep.
And we're over here in Australia. We would love to get some more shops stocking your magazine, because I think it's the biggest one going at the moment. There's you get contributions from all around the world, and I love the standard of photography you've got in your magazine. That always really stood out to me.
Thank you.
We've had several guests that have published articles in your mag, and I know what their photography is like, and you can tell people that know how to take photos and people that don't. So
Michael and Jesse are awesome.
Yeah, I was just going to say those two.
They're good people. They're easy to deal with. They wrote a freaking book. I've never printed an issue or an article that long in history. I mean, we've had the magazine since 2011. We personally owned it, and I think their article was 4,700 words.
Wow.
Yeah.
Far out. They wrote you a little book. That's good.
It literally could have been an entire, and I cut a bunch of it out, or not me, but the copy editors. It could have been 50 pages. It was amazing. I felt bad giving it a little bit of a trimming, but I mean, we trimmed it to 4,700.
Yeah, a bit of a shout out to Jessie Cripps too. She's got a blog where she sort of really writes a lot of articles for women that are interested in getting involved in spearfishing, and she's got some phenomenal articles in there. And she just writes in a really sort of practical way. So no, that'd be cool, man. All right, well we're gonna dig in and probably write you an article at some stage in the next year or so. So I'm just looking at Turbo for that, by the way, Jeromy.
You know what we're gonna get an email back. Thanks Turbo for your submission. Unfortunately, the magazine is full right now, and we're not looking for contributions.
Sorry, Turbo, your paltry 200 words of shit will not be printed in this episode.
Maybe aim for letters to the editor. Regards, Jeromy Gamble.
Jeromy
I'll
Gamble
let you guys
Spearing
do a
Mag.
letter from the editor. That's fine. There's plenty of months where I'm like, I don't have anything to say for this one.
Yeah. Sometimes inspiration doesn't come all the time. Where else can listeners come and find you, Jeromy? On social media?
Yeah, Spearing Magazine on Instagram, Spearing Magazine on Facebook. I think we're on Flickr and Google and we're
all the stuff.
We're everywhere. Yeah.
I'll link up a bunch of that stuff in the show notes so people can come over to Jeromy Gamble. If they just pump that into Google, it'll come up at noobspearo.com. Come and listen. Have a look at his show notes.
Yeah.
What else, Jeromy? Any parting piece of guidance or any action you want our audience to take?
Go out there, enjoy yourselves, have fun, relax. Talk to guys that know more than you know, and don't question their advice. Go out and put it to use and enjoy the sport. That's the point of it. It's not about egos. It's not about how deep you dive. It's not about the size of the fish you shoot. It's about going out and spending time with close friends that are watching each other's backs and enjoying themselves.
Oh, God. Awesome. Stop talking about your bum.
You've made me self-conscious. Awesome chatting with you, Jeromy, today. Thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, that was a good time. Appreciate it. I'm going to go make another drink now.
Shrek, you know me, I love to pretend to read. And even more than that, I love glossy images. And that's exactly what you get with Spearing Magazine. It's our favourite spearfishing magazine from Jeromy Gamble, our guest on the Noob Spearo podcast. It's an absolute ripper, and he's got a great deal for listeners here in Australia.
That's right. You can get the whole back catalogue for $60 Australian. If you're down south, if you're down under, and we'll include the South Africans in that
Absolutely.
as well.
Love our South mates.
You can email Jeromy sales@spearingmagazine.com and secure the whole back catalogue for $60. Jeromy put this together just to help us people down here overcome the cost of shipping. So get hold of 19 issues of this top quality magazine for $60. I hope you enjoyed today's interview with Jeromy Gamble. He's an absolute bloody character, this bloke. And Spearing Magazine have now jumped on board the Noob Spearo podcast to sponsor the show. So welcome aboard spearingmagazine.com. Now, also, next week, Turbo, what do we got next week?
We have a 101 episode with Bill Corton, our resident expert in bar crossings. So coastal bar crossings are basically where rivers or estuaries meet the sea, and they are areas of high risk for any boatie heading out. So Bill Corton talks to us all about how to safely traverse bars on the way in and the way out and get you home safely. So join us for that one. Bill's quite a character, and we have a ton of fun with that one as well. So thanks for listening to today's episode.
Thanks for listening, guys.
If you're in need of some new equipment, maybe a new gun, some fins, or anything else you can think of, check out spearfishing.com.au. That's the online store for Adreno. They have got a huge range of gear, anything you could ever think of. And not only that, if you use the code NoobSpearo at checkout, so go to checkout, it'll say enter code, put in NoobSpearo, and you'll save yourself $20 on all purchases over $200. So do yourself a favour, get on to spearfishing.com.au, save yourself some money and get some great gear. If you're anything like my mid-30s friend Shrek, then you probably look like you're dressing out of the 90s still. I've just got to say right now, a big thank you to Staunch Industries, who sent us a couple of shirts for Shrek in XXL. He looks bloody mint, and he's not an embarrassment to be around. So if you're looking for some spearfishing apparel, check out Staunch Industries. I think their website's staunchindustries.com. Check them out. Their stuff's absolutely excellent. They've got some great designs.
Also, guys, quick request. Wherever you listen to the show, leave us a review. It helps other people find the show. And it's always good to be chatting with you. Looking forward to getting in your ears again in another fortnight.
Thanks for listening, guys, and hope you nail a big one.